What is going on, guys? It's Bryan from StreamEast Sports. Happy week 1 of college football. It is Thursday, August 28th. We got a couple Big Ten games kicking off this week. Had a couple great week 0 games. So we kind of want to do a little bit of a teaser for an upcoming show that we have dropping tomorrow. So this is going to be quick preview of an over-under win-loss total video that I'm going to be dropping. And we're going to touch just on some of my favorite plays that just so happen to be playing today. So we want to get this content out before kickoff. Hopefully you guys can lock in those bets. We can get you guys started off with a very profitable year over here at StreamEast Sports. So very excited. Got some great games, some great teams playing today. So without further, delay, let's kind of get into it. And real quick, guys, before I get too far into the video, just kind of want to apologize for any audio, visual snafus. We're getting the channel back up and rolling after some time off. The set here behind me is still a work in progress for later this week. We'll be ironing some of that stuff out as the year goes on. So just bear with me if you got a little feedback in the mic, if, the video editing isn't quite there. We got a sick kid here at home, but, no excuses. Grind never stops. We're going to get a video out to you every week regardless. So make sure to stay tuned, and let's jump right back into the video. All right, so first win-loss total that we want to touch on for the year. And all of these are strong plays for me. None of these are leans. These are all plays. You can track them on our third-party Pickett account. We will link that below. But first one we want to look at is the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So their season over-under is set at 6.5 wins. To me, this is an easy over. So we're looking at the schedule here. On the road at Cal, I'm not worried about that one. So they should start off the season, 3 easy wins going into the bye. You come off the bye and you get into Big Ten play. I could see them having a winning record coming out of the next 5 games. At the very least, being slightly under that. And then to finish off the season after the final bye week, probably a loss over there in Eugene. But you're going to have wins against Northwestern, and I believe a win at home against Wisconsin. So this kind of puts their floor, to me, at 7 wins, which is great. If they sneak up and win a Michigan State matchup, or they beat an Iowa team that I think is going to be a lot better, I don't necessarily think they will beat a talented Nebraska team, but it's possible. And all those things would kind of just be a cherry on top. I don't see them stubbing their toe at all along the way. These are gimmies on, as far as the Big Ten schedule goes. So I think this guarantees them that 7-win floor. Now, if we look at the actual strengths of the roster, they have elite running backs with Darius Taylor. He's an all Big Ten honorable mention guy. A.J. Turner is a transfer coming in. He was all Sun Belt second team, I believe it was. So he should be a great complementary back. Just hopefully a big key to me is that offensive line. You can have an elite run game, but if you don't have the offensive line to back it up, one guy can only do so much. When you got a D-line, linebacking core, like some of these Big Ten teams have, like an Iowa will put out, or an Oregon, or especially in Ohio State. You're going to need your line to show up and show out them big boys up front. So, a big key for me is, does this offensive line support those elite running backs? They do have a strong defense with lots of playmaking defenders on the back end, notably Coy Parrish, who's, a lot of people will say the second best safety in the country behind Downs. I think he may be, fighting Downs for that first spot. So definitely some playmakers on the back end. And another strength of the team is P.J. Fleck. I mean, he's built a strong culture there. They've improved their record every year. Last year, I think they finished 8-4. So, do I necessarily think they get to that 8-win total? Probably. I probably do. But I also believe that there's a strong chance that, 7 wins is on the table for them. Either way, this still clears their 6.5 win total. So, some weaknesses of the team would be that they have an inexperienced quarterback in Drake Lindsey. He's a highly touted prospect, but he's thrown, I think, 5 passes. He in NCAA football. He looked good during those 5 passes. I think he had 80 yards and a touchdown, no picks. And he's won the QB battle in camp. They do have some backup quarterbacks that have a little bit to their game in case things don't work out with the kid. But I expect them to play him and to kind of ride it out with him. He seems to be their quarterback of the future. So that is one of the weaknesses of the team I see is their inexperienced quarterback. You add kind of a lack of outside weapons. I believe Parrish is kind of looking at being a two-way guy, which is interesting. But these things make them pretty one-dimensional offensively. So you can have a great run game, but when the defense can key on that, and you might not necessarily have a top 5 offensive line in the Big Ten, it can pose some problems for you. So I really think another key for them is just beating who they're supposed to beat. You look at their schedule, you see the teams like Cal, Rutgers, Purdue, Northwestern. They got to win those games. I have them beating Wisconsin at home to end the season. I think Wisconsin is going to be a pretty dejected team by that point. They got an extremely tough schedule. I don't think they're looking at a bowl berth, win or lose in that game. So it's one of those games where I believe a Minnesota team with a little bit more to play for, a little bit more juice, should be able to roll at home against what I believe is a worse Wisconsin team, worse roster, worse coaching. But, I mean, this kind of leads into our last key, which they just have to defend home field. When you look at some of these games like Michigan State at home, Wisconsin at home, even the gimmies like Rutgers, Purdue, they got to win those games. You can't have – I don't think they can really have more than those 2 losses at home. And probably 1 loss would make me feel a lot safer. But regardless, this win total to me is extremely low. It's a little bit juiced, but we're going to be playing the over to start today's video with the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So that will be our first over-under teaser for the season. Looking at our next over-under total, this time we're going to be on the underside. No hesitation here. We're going to be looking at the Wisconsin Badgers, a team that we touched on a little bit towards the end there in the Minnesota segment. They have this team with an over-under of 5.5 wins. And, as I mentioned, we will be playing that under. And I feel pretty confident in this one. So looking at their schedule, I believe everyone, has kind of mentioned how tough their schedule is. I don't really have to mention how tough their schedule is. You look at those names: Alabama on the road, Michigan in the big house, Oregon, in the Autzen Zoo. You got to go. You do have Ohio State at home. Good luck. Even their home games are kind of set up for them to lose. When you look at, an Iowa team that I think is improved. Illinois has got a lot of preseason hype. So I really see 3 guaranteed wins on this schedule and 2 possible wins towards the back end of the season. And even if they get to those 5 wins, this still puts them under that 5.5 threshold. So Wisconsin, a perennial bowl team, missed a bowl for the first time in a long time last season under Coach Luke Fickell. He's one of the keys for this team to me. I don't believe that he is a super talented coach. I don't know why I don't necessarily believe in him that strongly, but his first season was kind of underwhelming. He did have a good track record in his previous stops, but I need to see it. So I'm not necessarily putting him as a weakness of the team. Despite my personal beliefs, I think he's more of an X factor. Is he the coach that some people think he is, or is he the coach, that I think he is, which may not cut it up there in Madison. So that's a big key for me. A strength of the team is the pass defense. They have plenty of playmakers in the secondary, which would be great, but I mean, I don't necessarily see their pass defense being called upon to win them games. It's kind of one of those things that works in tandem with a good offense. You know, getting ahead forces teams to pass the ball. If you're getting beat and you can't score, teams are just going to keep running it and running it and running it. And that's what I believe is a big weakness of this Wisconsin defense is their strength against the run. Now, can they get a surprise win and win those two iffy games? They totally can. So there's always a chance, when you're gambling. But I'm looking at the schedule, and I just don't see where it's going to come. I mean, maybe they beat an Iowa team that I believe by that point will have gelled with their new quarterback. Kind of plays not necessarily into their style of defense, though, with the heavy run. Same with Michigan. Ohio State is just going to be simply too talented. Same with Oregon. I believe Washington is going to have a great all-around team, especially a good pass game with the young quarterback up there. So I just don't know where they're going to sneak a win. If they do sneak a win, great for the over. Hurts us pretty bad with the under. So, some other strengths that I think they'll have this year are better quarterback play, at least. Billy Edwards Jr. he's awesome. He's a Maryland transfer. He's a playmaker. He showed lots of flashes, I believe, that he's an above-average Big Ten quarterback, in my opinion. So I do like that. I don't like the skill players. They have losses of all their top producers, top receiving yards, top rushing yards. All are elsewhere now. And, but that being said, they do have a strong offensive line. So they have a star right tackle. That offensive line in Wisconsin is always going to be good. So it's kind of like the opposite of the Minnesota situation. You might have, I believe they're going to have above average backs. They're young. They need to, get some experience. But does having that great offensive line complement them and put them above an elite running game, or at least on equal footing, or elite running backs, or at least equal footing with them? I believe it could. So that's one of the strengths that I'm looking at with this team is their offensive line as well. And that offensive line with the better quarterback play, hopefully you see a little bit of a better offensive output. But I still think this offense is going to lack the fireworks to keep up with, the big names on this schedule. So we are definitely looking into playing the under today with the Wisconsin Badgers total win total for the season. And then last but not least, one of the teams that I'm most excited to watch this season, I don't think I'm the only one. A lot of people are starting to jump on the train early. And this is a hype train that I've seen build and crash plenty of times. And that is going to be the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So sportsbooks have them at over under 7.5 wins this season. This is an easy play for me, easy over. An easy schedule for them. Cincinnati tonight, I believe, is an easy win. Or not an easy win, but is going to be a win. They are kind of getting acclimated to Power 5 football, but first thing out the gate, going against a Dylan Raiola in year 2, a Matt Rule in year 3, it's just a tough matchup for them. So I misspoke earlier, not an easy win, but I see a win there. This kind of puts them, in the driver's seat to begin the season. I can totally see them beating my Wolverines at home in Lincoln, especially as that's going to be one of Underwood's, first big road game, second big road game, obviously, with the Oklahoma Week 2 matchup. But I would not be – I would probably bet my money as a Michigan fan on the Cornhuskers to pull that one off. You look at the next chunk of their schedule. Can they beat Minnesota? Maybe. But I don't think it matters. They're going to get 5 wins there. So you kind of have a guarantee of 8 wins off the bat. And then you go into the last 2 games of the season. Penn State, I don't expect them to pull that one off. Iowa, I personally think they will. But I also look to them to kind of struggle against some of these better run games, some of these more grinded out offenses and defenses. They did lose a lot of key defensive players. They lost their defensive coordinator, took a job over there at Florida State. They're thrilled to have him. I know Nebraska our Nebraska fans are wishing he was still around. But I really do like their new incoming defensive coordinator. John Butler, he's promoted from within, so he's been a part of that program. He's got a lot of experience coaching. He's been with Bills in the NFL, coaching their DBs. Great track record as far as, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, just stud after stud after stud. A lot of that is the players, but I got to give the coaching some credit. He was at Penn State for a year there, so he's been around the Big Ten. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. So I do think it's a disadvantage having a new defensive coordinator, no matter how good he is. But I still think he's an above-average defensive coordinator. Matt Rule has shown that he can bring high-level assistants into that program. So I have a lot of belief in him. So even though I have that as a weakness, the defensive players that they lost, the defensive coordinators they lost, I believe that also can be, one of the keys and possibly even a strength for them. So they have talented transfer portal class coming in. Like I said, the good, vetted, experienced, promoted from within hire. These units, if they come out and they perform as well as they did last year or even close, that offense is going to be immensely improved in year 2 under Dylan Raiola, who had a great true freshman season. One of the best passers against zone in the country. One of the best historically as a true freshman, and breaking the Nebraska bowl curse. You got to feel good about that offense rolling into year 2, especially with some incoming transfers on that side of the ball as well in the wide receiver position that are supposed to help stretch the field and get Raiola some better windows to throw into. As I kind of touched on, they broke that bowl curse. They got a lot of momentum on their side. They won, a lot of games there down the stretch last season. So I think they should have a lot of confidence rolling into this season. The monkey's off their back, as they say, as far as getting that winless streak off their back. So I think those things are going to work together and kind of ensure that this is an easy cash for us. So, this one, the Minnesota play, are definitely 2 of my favorites. I can foresee a world where Wisconsin surprises me, surprises somebody. I mean, they're a traditional power. They should, have the talent, be able to still pull the recruits to compete. But I don't love their schedule, and so to me, all 3 of these are strong plays as far as the over-under win-loss for the season total. So I know we got the all 3 of them play today on Thursday. The only game that I'm really going to be keying in on personally is that Nebraska-Cincinnati matchup. I believe that's still going to be a very good game, even if it's not necessarily a close one. So I went ahead and I put together some plays for tonight's game too that I wanted to slip in before I left you. So looking at first kind of the overall plays for the game, I have 2 favorite plays. They're both parlays. Let me move this around so you can kind of see a little better. There we go. So yeah, they're 2 2-leg parlays, pretty mild. Just kind of want to get more of an insurance bet and still not have to pay a ton of juice, if that makes sense. I do think Nebraska pulls this game out, but I think Cincinnati keeps it pretty competitive. So I'm looking at, a projected game. I believe it's going to be more like a 28-13, kind of on the low end of that range. But I could see Nebraska hanging some points on them. I could see Cincinnati scoring some points too. They've got a really good run game. They got a great quarterback in Brennan Sorsby, super underrated. He started at Indiana, had a good season. Started at Cincinnati last year, had a pretty good season. He's a dual threat quarterback, but I think a lot of times that gets thrown around with guys who can't throw the ball. He can throw the ball down the field. He's pretty accurate. I don't know if they have the wide receivers to do that, but I think they have the quarterback too. And, that run game was dominant last year. So don't look at this like it's going to be an easy win for Nebraska, especially early in the season. Teams are liable to have lots of mistakes. It's kind of hard for the offenses to gel. Usually the defenses are kind of ahead of the offenses. So I am looking at the lower range of that projected total for both teams. So the first play that I have here is just Nebraska on the money line and the under 27.5 team total for Cincinnati. I just don't see a world where Cincinnati, even if they are moving the chains, they're a run-dominant team. I don't think they're going to play a very fast-paced offense. I think they're going to want to try to grind the game down and, slow and take longer possessions, less drives, slow that Nebraska offense down. If they get into a shootout with Raiola, I don't think that necessarily spells, a recipe for success for them. And then the other play that I'm looking at, it's kind of the same thing, just flipped around in a different way that maybe you might prefer. It's got a little bit better odds. It's Nebraska on the race to 25 and Cincinnati to cover a 17-point spread. I believe that, if any team's going to get to 25, it's going to be Nebraska, and they should. It's the game's in Arrowhead. I don't think the offense is going to want to show their whole hand, but I think Raiola is going to want to come out, kind of make a statement to start his sophomore year. I think they're going to at least put 2 or 3 touchdowns on the board. At least 3 touchdowns on the board. And then, kick a couple field goals. Maybe they get a 4th touchdown. I can just see this Nebraska team starting to wear on a Cincinnati team that's just not as talented, not as big. So those are kind of what I'm looking at over there. At the same time, with Cincinnati's slower pace of play, the grinded-out offense, I think a 17-point spread is very safe. I think they can cover the 6.5-point spread that the odds makers gave them. I think that's super possible, especially early in the year. The larger spreads seem a lot harder to cover than they do once these teams kind of get into the flow of things. So that is slightly better odds at plus 181. And when I put these parlays together, I know everyone kind of has a different flavor of parlay. I pretty much try to get a safe bet that's profitable, that we're not paying any juice or as little juice as possible. And, we kind of just want to slowly build that win total up, especially early in the season. You don't want to get down a bunch of units early in the year. So these are 2 of our favorite overall plays for the game. I did go ahead and throw together a couple of player props as well. So let's look at those. Here are the props. So I only really have one play for this game. Especially college football, it's hard to put together player props all the time. Some limited lines. Our previous odds, by the way, I forgot to mention. Let me pull that back up. So these odds were boosted with boosts that I believe are available to all customers via Fanatics Sportsbook. So we are huge into the boosts here at StreamEast Sportsbook. Why not get better odds if you can? I pretty much try to finagle my parlays around the boost just to get that little extra edge and odds. So, the original odds, like I said, 181 on the second play. I think the original odds were in the 140 range. We would still play the original odds on all these plays if you didn't have the boost, if you already used your boost, if you're on a different sports book that might not have the boost. But that being said, if you do have the boost, you know, much sexier options for sure. So same thing over here over at FanDuel Sportsbook. We are looking at a play minus 144 typically. You can boost it up to, even odds. And this is a super safe player prop parlay. Raiola, I think, is going to want to get a touchdown for his twin brother, Mahomes, out there in Arrowhead. Emmett Johnson is a super talented back, great in the passing game as far as receiving the ball from the backfield. So 5 yards is a gimme. And Sorsby, like I said, he's a dual threat quarterback. He's going to have to scramble at some point for a first down. Them Cincinnati wide receivers aren't going to be able to separate completely. Hopefully he can keep the negative plays to a minimum because, the key difference here that, some people don't always take into account is in college the sacks go against your rushing yards. So he's got to get the ball out of his hands, but I don't think he's going to be looking to take negative plays. I think he might let one rip before he holds it and takes a shot, especially early in the year. And I think he's going to be scrambling multiple times in the game, but 10 yards is a pretty low threshold. This gets us to even money, and, it gets our bankroll kind of growing to start the season. So these are some of our favorite plays over here at StreamEast Sports for tonight. Like I said, happy week 1. Thursday is always exciting. Get you some action before the weekend. And we definitely will have more content for you, so be on the lookout for the rest of the Big Ten video that's dropping tomorrow. We'll probably drop SEC video tomorrow or very early on Saturday. And then we look to have some week 1 game picks as far as the bigger matchups, player props, game totals, the whole shebang. So, very, very first video back after a long hiatus. Again, apologies for some of the inconsistencies or snafus, but we will get it all right, and we'll make money along the way. So we just kind of want to share that process with you guys. I'm Bryan from StreamEast. Happy college football Thursday, guys. See you later.